My name is Sally Dean, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself first, and then I will tell you my story about the Heath School. I have two children, Michelle Dean Onabajo and Andrew Dean, and they both went to the Heath School and graduated Brookline High. And Andrew has two children, Noah, who is presently at Brookline High School, and Emily, who will leave Baker and go to Brookline High next year. And Michelle has twins, Mason and Andrew. I started at the Heath School in 1986, where I worked as the French and Spanish teacher and also health for 12 years, and then became the vice principal for another 16 years. And that's what I really want to talk about. I really would love to stress that I learned the sense of community and the hard work of being a student while I was at Heath. So let me start by saying that I really believe that the first profession of every child is to be a student, and it's a very hard one. And I'll prove my fact, I hope. So Heath was a small school. It had 300 students in K through 8. And I want to give you two examples of what made it a very special school and a very special community. One was, there was a Heath family meeting for the younger grades. And the way Heath family meeting worked was that students could voice concerns, teachers could pose questions, anyone could ask for advice, and one class would always showcase their work. I want to read you a little bit of what happened at one Heath family meeting, and this went out in a PTO newsletter to the parents. The children were in the cafeteria for the meeting, and this is how some of the students responded to the question. We really want to improve the ambiance in our Heath School cafeteria. Give us some suggestions. Children in first grade said, put on some music and kids could then whisper to their friends. We should make one person at a time talk. Let's have a contest. The quietest table gets to get pizza once a week. The same kids should stay at the same table. Would it be a good idea if children had to raise their hands and then talk? Do you think children could take turns talking around the table? If there are kids making noise, somebody should put them in the principal's office. I think people should talk at recess, and then kids could have a quiet lunch. Many of these were in invented spelling, which was very much a mark of a Brookline education in those days. Anyway, I thought it was just wonderful to hear the thoughts of the children and for them to know that their opinion was really valued. And the meeting always ended with the song, Heath Has Heart, which Sandy Nicolucci wrote, who was then the music teacher. A second example I want to show you or talk about is every year Heath had a literary journal. Every student could submit one or two pieces, could be a poem, could be a story, could be a picture. But every student was asked to make a contribution. But after the cover, which was also designed by a student, students were asked to respond to a question. I want to read some of those answers. What I like about Heath. Teachers all know you by name. All the love that's in this school. Outdoor recess. My friends. We have fun and entertaining stuff. After stuff school. The teachers. That music is important and we make time for it. So students have voices and they were empowered to inform us and to give us direction for the school. I want to give a very personal example of a student giving me some personal direction. When I first started at Heath, I thought I really want to be involved at the extracurricular fun things that students do. So with a very good friend of mine, Deb Andre, who also lives in Brookline, we took over what was then called the talent show. Well, one day a student came to me and said, I don't have any talent. I've tried out for the talent show and I've never gotten in. That statement hit me very powerfully because I thought, every child has talents. We just need to figure them out and showcase them. So Deb and I put our heads together, and the talent show became the variety show. We added things to it. We added a joke wall. We added group dances. We took things away, but we listened to the voice of those children who weren't once a part of it. And that, I felt, was a good display of what, if you listen to children, you can really make a place more of a community. And it was a lot of fun. Deb and I always enjoyed it. The kids enjoyed it. The school enjoyed it. So that's one example. Another example I'd like to give you is of a student who once came into my classroom, very beginning of the year, first day of school. I'm in my French classroom, and everybody's coming in and taking a chair in the circle, and he walks up to me and he says, Miss Dean, no one in my family has ever learned a language, so just so you know, I can't learn a language. I looked at him and said, have a seat. And so I knew, of course I knew, that he could learn a language. And it made me think about how I was going to structure this class to make it fun and also easily absorbed by every student in my classroom. So I did as many creative things as I could. We created games. We had conjugate verbs by doing races. We learned left and right by playing a different version of musical chairs by standing on pieces of paper. I invented games. One was called the soup game, where I would say a letter of the alphabet and then call a student's name, and they had to say a vocabulary word in French with that letter. And if they couldn't think of one, they had to get in the middle of the circle, which was the soup. And you couldn't repeat words. We'd play it endlessly when we were learning new vocabulary. And it was fun, but it was a good way to learn vocabulary, a good way to conjugate verbs. And I realized that the students were excited about learning. They wanted to do charades. They wanted to write alphabet books with the younger grades. They were excelling, but they were learning because they were at ease, and it was easy for them to learn. One last example that made me feel that I probably was on the right track was a student at Valentine's Day, the PTO came around with hearts and gave them to certain kids and asked them to write a note to their teacher. And this student wrote, I really like you, Miss Dean. She's great because she's high on fun and low on homework. And I had to laugh because I thought, wow, I guess these kids really get it. They get that I want them to learn, but I want them to enjoy. So I think to me that lesson was, you really always have to be aware of how every student in your classroom feels. And there was always ways to get extra credit. And sometimes I would say, well, lilacs are my favorite flowers. So if anybody brings in a bouquet of lilacs, one night of free homework. It was great. It was really a learning process for both of us. So anyway, I knew I was on the right track. The one thing I want to say right now about students is that I've never met a student that couldn't see right through me or right through anyone. They can read your heart, they can read your mind. They know if you're genuine. So if you're going to make mistakes. I'm sure I know I made lots of mistakes, but you correct them, you move on, you laugh together. And students know you're genuine. You've really, really engaged with them. And that made us a community, that feeling of trust and being at ease. So I think now is also probably a good time for me to talk a little bit about how I feel there's an amazing stress on students. You come to school, you've got to work your way through the socialization process. Everyone wants to have friends, everyone wants to be accepted. You want to feel good about yourself. And so there's this evaluation that goes on sometimes between kids, and it's a pressure. There's the pressure that they sometimes feel that success is being measured. And they have to learn that success means many, many things. So that's why I feel that the first profession of every child really is being a student. And that's hard work. And I value that hard work. Let's see, so now there's parents. The parents at Heath School were phenomenal. They had a PTO that would do anything for the staff and everything. There was the Brookline Foundation that gave teachers grants. I got to go to France and study. I also went to Costa Rica on a trip to visit the schools, where I learned that in Costa Rica, every school has the exact same curriculum. So as I went from town to town, if one town was on page 92 in the math textbook, by the time I got to the next town, they were on page 94. But it has 100% literacy. So there's something to be said for that. But it was such an eye-opener to me that that's the way it could be. So I guess I want to say that I feel unbelievably lucky to have had an amazing experience at the Heath School, and that community is all of us learning to listen and to embrace the importance of others. And I learned that from my students and from their families. Thank you.